Formalizing a relationship triggers an immediate automatic shift in how the law categorizes a couple's assets. Under baseline property law, ownership is strict and literal. The name on the title deed dictates control, regardless of how long two people have lived together or shared expenses. Clients often operate under the assumption that a marriage certificate provides a different tier of financial protection than a civil partnership certificate. These two categories originally emerged from very distinct historical and legislative origins, each being formalized under entirely separate acts of Parliament. Despite those separate origins, the act of formalization overrides the rigid rules of property ownership and replaces them with a shared statutory regime. We must examine how these two distinct legal statuses reconstruct those baseline property rights. To visualize this, we place a marriage certificate left and a civil partnership right. In property law, they act as a mirror. Dissolving into a matrix, their statutory terminology differs, but their functional property rights align across three domains: occupation, asset division, and intestacy. The procedures to form these unions are separate, but the underlying legal architecture governing their assets is a precise reflection. In strict property law, if a non-owning partner's name is absent from the deed, they have no automatic legal right to occupy the family home. Formalization introduces the first statutory override to this rule: home rights. These protections are codified in Section 30 of the Family Law Act 1996. In our matrix for occupation, the Family Law Act illuminates equally across both columns, applying the same protections to both relationship types. This grants a residing partner the right not to be evicted and grants non-residents the right to enter with court leave. To bind third parties, such as mortgage lenders, these rights must be registered with the Land Registry using Form HR 1. Once registered, these statutory home rights neutralize the threat of strict ownership evictions for both spouses and civil partners. When a formal relationship breaks down, the family home and shared assets must be formally divided. Standard trust law, utilizing resulting and constructive trusts, would limit this division strictly to proven financial contributions. Upon formal dissolution, however, the family court has the authority to set aside those rigid trust laws. Row 2 maps the statutes governing this: the Matrimonial Causes Act for marriages and the Civil Partnership Act for civil partnerships. Both utilize property adjustment orders, allowing a judge to reallocate the home regardless of legal title. In both regimes, the court uses the yardstick of equality as the starting point for division, weighing non-financial contributions equally with financial ones. Upon relationship breakdown, the court's power to rewrite ownership utilizes the same discretionary framework, regardless of the union's title. The final property timeline occurs upon the death of a partner. If a partner dies without a valid will, their assets are distributed according to the rules of intestacy. Our final row shows how the law evaluates inheritance under intestacy. The structure is identical for both columns. The surviving partner is entitled to the first £322,000, all personal chattels outright, and 50% of any remaining value. In the context of inheritance law, a civil partnership certificate and a marriage certificate provide functionally identical protections against disinheritance. This legal mirror highlights the vulnerability of those living outside of these protected categories. Cohabitation, living together without a formal marriage or civil partnership, carries a different set of legal rules. Adding a third column for cohabitation shows a starkly different legal reality. As the red marks indicate, cohabitants have zero statutory home rights and no access to the discretionary property adjustment powers available during formal dissolution. A final mark hits the intestacy row. A surviving cohabitant has no automatic right to inherit their partner's estate under intestacy rules. These partners remain subject to the Law of Property Act 1925, where ownership is determined solely by the literal terms of the title deed and trust law. The primary legal divide exists between those with a certificate of formalization and those without one. The differences between marriages and civil partnerships are matters of statutory terminology, not functional property rights. Both statuses bypass strict trust law, substituting the literal terms of a title deed for a statutory framework designed to ensure equitable distribution. Advising clients requires looking past the labels on the certificates to evaluate the specific statutory mechanisms at work. Ultimately, The most significant property decision two adults can make is the act of formalizing their relationship under statutory protection, regardless of the certificate they choose.